Spring is here, the weather is warming up, and summer is coming, both in terms of real weather as well as in terms of Bitcoin. Bitcoin winter is over. It ended in 2022. We're through Bitcoin spring, and pretty soon it's going to be nice and hot, and Bitcoin's going to be running up and up and up. And a lot of people are going to ask, and they're going to ask their financial advisors, should I get Bitcoin, right? Obviously, everybody watching this video believes the answer is yes, absolutely. But the reality is that not everybody is in the same position as you, right? I'm 25 years old. Most of you watching this are older than me. I know that because I look at all the data of the 40 to 50,000 or so people that follow me on Twitter/X and YouTube. And I know, assuming the data is correct, which given they're basically tech monopolies, I'm assuming it's correct, most of you are above 35 years old. It's a common misconception. A lot of people think Bitcoiners are, oh, Bitcoiners, that's the young man's game. That's a young kid's thing. Oh, Luke, you're so lucky. You're so young to be in Bitcoin, and you young people get it, and the old boomers like me don't get it, blah, blah, blah. I hear that all the time. However, ironically, actually, it's not true. It's not true at all. In fact, about 97% of the people that follow me are older than me, right? So yes, there are people younger than me that are into Bitcoin. There are people in my age group, 20 to 30 years old, that are buying Bitcoin. But the vast majority of people within Bitcoin are actually older, mid-age, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. I meet way more 70-year-olds into Bitcoin than 20-year-olds into Bitcoin. Shoot, I probably even meet more 80-year-olds into Bitcoin than 20-year-olds. That might be a bit of a stretch. That's a lot closer, but 70-year-olds definitely. It's just something that's very interesting. A lot of people ask why. Why is that? And then in this video, I want to address the big question of what should you do depending on what age group are you in, right? Are people that are retiring or about to retire need Bitcoin? Do they need Bitcoin? And what about the young people? You know, it's a trade-off, right? People that are older say, well, I don't need Bitcoin because the stocks and the bonds and the housing market's done really well for me for a very long period of time, and it's not going anywhere soon. And you're right, maybe Bitcoin's the future. Maybe it takes over the world, but I don't need it for where I am because I'm about to retire. I can't tolerate the volatility, and, you know, I'm not going to live that long, right? And then, of course, the young people, more my generation, you know, they all say, oh, I don't have any money, or I've got plenty of time, or, you know, it's so far in the future, blah, 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 right? So for basically the same concept, people believing that they don't need Bitcoin and believing that they have lots of time before the world changes, you know, from that same foundation, people kind of leverage their own personal excuses for that. Younger people like myself say, I don't have any money, therefore why should I care about 50 years from now? And people that are older say, well, I'm probably not going to live 50 years anyway, so even though I have the money to protect, why do I need it? So I'm going to address those questions in this video so that no matter what age you are, whether you're 25 or if you're 65 or 75, hopefully these are just some perspectives to think about. So before anything else, I want to address what I think is going to happen with Bitcoin in the long-term future. Obviously, you know, I think it's going up. I think it's going way, way up. And let's talk about why. It's all about technology, right? Is that, you know, before technology, before civilization, before videos and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and email and whatever, pictures, Candy Crush, whatever your thing is, before all this modern technology and software, it's important to keep in mind that this was it. Like, this was life, right? You had the pine needles, the tree, the deer, the pond, right? People, everyone, when there was no technology, like, this was your life, right? So all the change that's happened over thousands of years has been a function of technology. Yes, culture has changed. Yes, morals have changed. Yes, people's worldviews have changed. But if you're trying to prepare for the future economy, the one thing you need to understand is technology, because technology changes the culture, it changes the worldviews, it changes what you do with your free time, it changes everything, right? In the ancient time period, right, when there was no technology, retirement was a thing that didn't exist, right? You can't exactly stock up, you know, rabbits you catch or fish you catch and a little nice little 401k under that tree over there, and you can withdraw on that for the next 20 years at 2%. No, like the fish is going to rot within, 3 days. It's going to spoil, right? So in the long-term past, there was no such concept as retirement. And then a couple hundred years ago, the concept of retirement blossomed, right? Because people were starting to save enough money and there was enough division of labor that people would save capital for their retirement, right? In ancient periods, of course, the question is, how did people that were older work, right? 80-year-olds can't go and hunt for food, right? 60-year-olds, like people's health declines over age. Their physical ability declines. Well, it's the same retirement policy that 90% of the world still has today, which is your kids are your retirement policy, right? For the vast majority of human history, thousands of years, your children were your retirement policy. Effectively, right? You have lots of kids, you raise good kids, and those kids are eventually going to take care of you because it's the right thing to do, and it's what they're going to do, right? But then over, a couple hundred years, the last couple centuries or so, that has transitioned towards, yes, you still have the kids, you still raise the kids, but instead of having lots of children and let those children grow out, be fruitful, multiply, and eventually you'll give some of that back to you, the new retirement policy is save up capital, park the capital, and let it sit and wait, right? Because you can't store the dead meat under the ground, and it's just, that's not how it works anymore. So my point in saying all that as a context for what I'm about to describe here is that we have less in common with the future and the past, right? I've said that a lot, but that's really critical to understand for this topic, right? If we're talking thousands of years ago, you have less in common with the future than the past, right? In the future, people are going to save political energy. They're going to save political capital instead of their kids being their retirement plan. That's crazy. That makes no sense, right? Now, here we are in that period where people prefer saving political energy within a certain tax structured account instead of having the kids be the inheritance. And now I'm here about to make the claim that that whole model is about to be destroyed. And that sounds crazy to a lot of people, right? Oh, how could you say the whole retirement model is going to be destroyed, Luke? That's insane. Technology is going to change, but my 401k and my tech, that's always going to be here. And I'm giving all this context because you have to admit we're already in a weird period, right? Like, this is already not normal, right? For still most people today, that's not normal, right? 80% of the world aren't nearly as financially privileged as you. 80% of the world's adults make less than $30 a day. They're not contributing, they're not matching their employers, 401k match, right? Like, still, for the majority of people in the world, that is the norm. So what is going to happen in the future, in my opinion? What's going to happen in the future is that instead of people going out and collecting a diversified basket of securities, commodities, debt products, and putting it in a basket and letting it sit and grow in political energy, instead of that model, people are just going to buy Bitcoin. And they're going to hold it. We are leaving the world that's been the last couple hundred years where the most effective way to save for retirement is a diversified portfolio of a mixture of different things. And that together is going to be your best approximation of global productivity, right? In your 30s, you want to buy percentages of different things. You want to buy some percentages of corporate equity. You want to buy some percentages of commodities. You want to buy a percentage of the housing market in your certain town, right? That's what you're doing. You're creating your own little portfolio, and then hopefully that percentage of productivity will grow in value, right? Hopefully 1% of the company you buy today is going to buy you more food in the future than it can today, right? Because that's the whole point. Preserve your purchasing power in the future. And so Bitcoin is kind of the same idea in that you're buying a fixed percentage of something that's trying to approximate productivity. But the difference is that instead of diversifying into a couple different index funds, each of which have dozens, if not hundreds of different companies, instead of diversifying into this and that and the other, you're just buying one thing. And I think that's what's going to happen, because ultimately all technological change is what causes these cultural changes. This massive, the biggest cultural change for people's last third of life, it's going to change again. And so what happens if you're somebody that is in kind of the age bracket? I get that question a lot. Me being 25, I have multiple family members that are either retiring, just retired, literally retiring next month, retiring in a year from now, right? Like most of my family that's the previous generation is like in that 5 to 10 year window where they're all retiring right now. And so a lot of them have this question, even if they don't understand Bitcoin yet, they're trying to figure it out. And so this is what I think is that, yeah, you still need Bitcoin. Yes, it's volatile, right? What is the number one risk if you're buying Bitcoin and you either have just retired, are retiring, or about to retire, right? What is the number one risk? The number one risk is that you have the price of Bitcoin fall dramatically precisely when you need it, right? Let's say you're somebody who is 65 years old and you're about to retire. Let's say you got $500,000 in retirement funds, just for easy math, right? Some of you have $5 million, others of you have $200,000 or $50,000 or whatever it is. Put the numbers for yourself. But just for an example, let's say you have $500,000 and you're 65 years old, and let's say you put all of it in Bitcoin. Okay? Well, then what happens if Bitcoin falls 50% in price, which is totally possible, by the way? Well, then all of a sudden you have 250 grand. And now you've got a real problem because you have a massive frustration. You have a massive emotional weight on your shoulders because now you're 65 years old. Your income has just fallen by 80%. And your little nest egg that's supposed to last you for the rest of your life has just fallen by half. And maybe you have conviction it'll go back up, but even if it does go back up, you don't want to deal with that stress, right? Like the whole point of retirement, the whole point of slowing down is that you can have more time to buy your time back. That's literally the point why we do it, right? You're trying to buy your time back. You're trying to buy your emotional stability back with your loved ones, with your family, going on vacations, doing mission work, donating to a cause, starting a little side hobby or business, whatever it is. And that volatility sucks that away. And so even if the Bitcoin does appreciate again, and it goes well beyond what it was worth when you originally bought it, that human cost, that time cost is very expensive, right? You know, you don't know how much time you have. None of us have time that's guaranteed. Let's say you're 65 years old, you buy $500,000 of Bitcoin, which is 100% everything you have. You're going all in, all the chips on the table. The volatility takes out half of the dollar denominated value of the Bitcoin. You don't know if your retirement's going to last 8 years or 30 years. You don't know if you're going to live to 72 or 95. You literally don't know. I've had family members that have died well into their mid-90s, and I have other family members who died earlier. Everyone has that kind of story, right? And so let's say, you know, you only live 10 years. Let's say you're going to have some sort of health event at 75. I hope that doesn't happen. I pray it doesn't happen, but let's say it does happen. Is going all in Bitcoin at 65 years old and spending the next 2 years stressed for 3 hours a day about your retirement portfolio, or going back to work for those 2 years? Maybe you're not emotionally stressed, but you're going back to work for those 2 years trying to buy more, right? Is it really worth giving up 2 of those 10 years, or a portion of those 2 of 10 years of stress and angst? That's pretty expensive. And yeah, maybe by year 3 or 4, Bitcoin is back well above what it was when you first originally bought it. But for most people, if we're honest, that's a lot of stress. And so this is why I strongly encourage you, not that this is financial advice, of course, but I strongly encourage you to focus on getting off zero instead of going all in. Because we don't know what the volatility is going to do. Bitcoin is down about 30% since its recent high to $109,000. Granted, it's up, 4 or 5x since late 2022, right? But for people getting off zero, it is a much smaller emotional commitment to get off zero and let Bitcoin grow into a large position. So a lot of people will hear me say this and they'll say, oh, okay, well, I have time. Actually, it's the inverse, right? If you are going all in, if that's your mindset, you have to go all in or stay all out, well, then you have a long period of time, right? Because let's say Bitcoin goes up 10x, well, then you could still buy effectively 50 grand worth of Bitcoin in the past, right? Let's say you can buy 1 Bitcoin today with your retirement portfolio, and you're debating if you should go all in or not, right? Well, then if Bitcoin runs up 10x, well, it's the same as if you'd only bought 0.1 Bitcoin all those years ago, right? And so what's a smaller emotional commitment for most people that are in their 50s, 60s, or 70s that are trying to decide what they should do with their retirement? I think it is the get off zero mantra. Because if Bitcoin adoption does occur, it's probably going to take a long period of time. It's probably not going to happen in 5 years, probably not even 10, 15, even 20 years, right? The internet was the fastest technological change in the history of the human race. And we are still at about 1/3 of the world's adults that don't use the internet. So people that tell me that somehow we're at 500 million people or 1/3 of a billion people are using Bitcoin, I just think they're wrong. I think they're delusional. There's no chance that 1/25 of the people using the internet are using Bitcoin. I just firmly don't believe that. That's really high. Actually, it'd be even higher. It'd be 1/20. But anyway, I digress. The point is, on one hand, if you're mid-age or approaching retirement, on one hand, you don't want to go all in Bitcoin because that volatility cost is really expensive, and every year is only more precious and a larger share of the remaining life you have here on Earth. On the other hand, though, if Bitcoin adoption does occur faster than the internet, which I personally believe it will, then we're looking at a time window maybe of 30 years, maybe 50 years. Let's say it's 50 years, just for the sake of example. Let's say it takes 50 years for Bitcoin adoption to be about what the internet is right now. Keep in mind, we're already 16 years into this. That means that we have about 35 years, 1/3 of a century, until Bitcoin is comparable in size and scope as the internet is today in people's lives, right? And so it's totally possible that you only have 5-10 years of retirement because of, God forbid, some health event. And so it's probably not wise to go all in. But at the same time, I hope and pray you live 20, 30, hope maybe even 40 years, who knows, right? With medicine getting better, and hopefully you're healthy, hopefully you're eating well, hopefully you have good habits, hopefully you're getting outside and enjoying that vitamin D, right? The hope, the assumption, the crossing of the fingers, and our prayer is that you live longer, right? And so if you want to be an optimist, if you want to assume I'm going to be healthy and I'm going to live as long as possible, then you should have the mindset of I should get off zero and buy some Bitcoin. Why? Because the last thing you want, yes, sure, you don't want to go all in Bitcoin and deal with the volatility in your first couple years of retirement because that's very emotionally traumatizing for most people, not everyone, but for most people. But by the same token, on the flip side of the coin, you don't want to retire at 65 and then realize by the time you're 85 or 95 that, holy cow, all the political energy I stored up has fallen 98% in terms of Bitcoin. It's probably going to fall another 50%, right? You don't want to you don't want to be in your 70s or 80s and having to make a large life-changing commitment at that point of time, right? Because I think those are your two options. Either you're going to take a small allocation exposure to Bitcoin now when you're 65 and let that grow into a large allocation over the next 10 or 20 years with a very small amount of emotional stress around that volatility, or you're going to do nothing right now. You're going to procrastinate. You're going to put it off. 5 years is going to go by like that. 10 years is going to go by really quick. And then all of a sudden, you're going to realize just to keep up with where I need to be, I need to convert 50% to Bitcoin. Like now, I need to convert 80% or 100%. And this is where I think a lot of financial advisors are going to have a lot of trouble in the latter half of the 2020s and throughout the 2030s, right? They've been saying for a long time to all their clients, you don't need any Bitcoin, you don't need any Bitcoin, you don't need any Bitcoin. Then I think all of a sudden what's probably going to happen is that they're going to come out to their clients and say, we need 10% Bitcoin and we need it like now. And most of their clients are going to come back and say, whoa, why 10%? You've been telling me for years, don't even get 2%. That even 2% is too risky. Why are you saying 10%? In the financial advisor's mind, of course, they know that because you need it. You need the 10% allocation now to keep up. This is no longer a question of staying ahead of the curve. It's a matter of keeping up, of preserving your way of life and preserving your kind of annual spending, right? And so that's my larger encouragement. If you are somebody that's older, again, that's not financial advice, but if you're somebody that's older, I would encourage you, have a long time horizon. I know you may feel old. I know it may feel like your years are flying by, but let's hope, let's pray that medicine gets better, that life gets better, technology gets better. Hopefully Bitcoin incentivizes more life extension and health span extension technologies. And hopefully if you're 65, I really hope you make it to 85, 95, maybe even 100 or longer, right? Your assumption should be you're going to live as long as possible, and therefore you should get off zero and take some non-zero percentage allocation to Bitcoin. So yes, the boomers need Bitcoin. Even if the boomers are saying to me, oh, Luke, Bitcoin's a young man's game, or oh, Luke, I don't need Bitcoin. I dare you to challenge yourself to live longer. I dare you to have a longer time horizon, because this is the last thing I'll say when it comes to the boomers. Let's say I'm wrong. Let's say you don't live that long. Let's say Bitcoin adoption takes longer than we think. How much of your energy do you want going to your kids or your grandkids? Because odds are you have kids or grandkids. Some of you don't. You know, many people in Bitcoin don't have kids, and that's okay. But most of you do have kids. And so here's the question. Okay, let's say I'm wrong. Let's say Bitcoin adoption takes longer, and let's say you don't live as long as optimistically we'll hope. Let's say that, let's say all that happens. Like, what do you think your kids are going to sell it for? You think, like, okay, maybe your time horizon is 20 years, but you're going to realize in 15 years, I've only got 5 years left here on Earth, and most of this money that's left is going either to my kids, to my spouse, to my friend, my nephew, my cousin, a charity I want to donate it to, right? And so even if you feel like your personal time horizon is not that long, like, the reality is that some of the money is probably going to outlive you. If you've been stewarding your money very well, hopefully it's going to definitely outlive you. And so again, we get back to that question of, what do you want to save your energy in? Do you want to save it in rotting fish under that tree right over there? I buried it right over there. It's in my 401k. I had a annual fish contribution with my employer, and it's all rotten now. It's all worthless, but I have it, right? That's going to be the same kind of mindset people have when it comes to saving your government currency or your political debt or your corporate debt or whatever it is that you have in your portfolio. It's the same kind of thing, okay? Fish is an ancient savings technology in terms of 18th century political currency. And likewise, 18th, 19th, 20th century political currency, and soon to be even 21st century political currency, is technologically inferior to the Bitcoin. So yeah, you can keep it, but it's going to be completely worthless, and your children will sell it off for a 99% loss versus what you could have bought just right now. So that'd be my encouragement. Let's say you got $1 million, and this is just a way to think about it. This is not a specific encouragement or financial advice. Let's save $1 million, and let's say, you know, I heard that Luke kid, he's 25, he's really young, maybe he's dumb, maybe Bitcoin goes to zero, but let's think about this. I got $1 million. Let's say I spend 90% of that over the course of the rest of my life because I'm going to Vegas or whatever, right? And 10% is going to my kids when I'm gone. My encouragement to you, my challenge to you would be to ask yourself, when that 10% goes to your kids, let's say you're learning about Bitcoin interested, what percentage of that do you think they're going to sell for Bitcoin? They're probably going to sell all of it for Bitcoin, if we're honest, right? If your time horizon's long enough. So why not move the 10% into Bitcoin? Or let's say you only have a 50% confidence in Bitcoin. Well then, why not move 5% into Bitcoin, right? And so obviously pretty quickly you can justify much higher allocations of what most people are thinking. Most people are looking at it and saying, oh, a 5% allocation is risky. I'm looking at it and saying, even if you're spending 90% of your capital on yourself instead of your children, well then, and you only have 50% confidence this Bitcoin thing is right, well then 5% is easy. And it's much more logical to make the move now and let the growth be in your favor before Bitcoin reduces that volatility 20 years, 30 years from now, right? It's reducing volatility every 5 years or so, right? Or every year, but it'll be noticeable every 5 years, every cycle or so. So that's my thought, is that yes, I think the boomers need Bitcoin. Now, let's flip to the other side of the question. The young people would say, oh, but Luke, $1 million, I don't have $1 million. You're talking right through me to the boomers. I don't have $1 million. I'm only 35 years old. I got 2 kids and I got $163,000. Or I'm, 22 years old and I've saved up $19,000 from my, summer job between college, right? Or I'm stacking as hard as I can. I just don't have the money. Like I should gamble in Ethereum for a while to make more Bitcoin or whatever, right? Like I should do these things to make more Bitcoin. My encouragement to you is likewise, extend your time horizon, right? Yes, I can say to the boomers, I hope you live 30, 40, 50 years, and I really hope that. But to you young people, the challenge is even greater, okay? I'm 25 years old. I'm here on Earth by the grace of God. He could take me any moment. A lightning strike or a branch could fall and impale me or something. I don't know. I could die tonight, and I wouldn't like that, but I'm content with it. On the other hand, though, you have to prepare again for the same concept. In the same way, the boomers have less in common with their near future than their ancient past when it comes to what they're saving for retirement. You young people out there have less in common with your long-term future less in common with your near-term future than your long-term past because of technology, right? Like, you have to really consider the possibility that in the next 50 years, we have significant life extension technology. Okay, is it possible that 50 years from now, the average 75-year-old or 70-year-old or 60-year-old or 80-year-old or whatever, is it possible that a middle-aged person or a boomer half a century from now is going to have access to technology and medical care that extends their lifespan, perhaps even longer than we can imagine today? Am I saying immortality? No, of course not. Am I saying transhumanism? No, of course not. But is it possible that instead of the average elderly person being 70, 80, or 90 now, what if it's 110, 120? What if it's 130 even 50 years from now? That's the expectation. And my point in that is that, as absurd as that might sound, we have to assume it's a non-zero possibility. What if there's a 1 in 3 chance what I'm describing happens? What that means is that a child born today might very well live to see 2140. They might live to see 2150. That may even be too pessimistic, right? And there's a lot of unknowns there, and I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But the point I'm making is that if you're 20 years old, like, you've got time on your side. You got way more time than you think. And yeah, you may feel like you're falling behind. Oh, I'm 20 years old. I haven't even saved up for a house yet. I'm trying to get 1 Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. And I feel like I'm falling behind. Luke, what do I do? Do I gamble in the meme coins? No, my encouragement would be buy Bitcoin, save Bitcoin, and wait. Yeah, for the next 5 years, you might feel like you're falling behind, and you might feel like that you don't have enough Bitcoin, blah, 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 whatever. But guess what? If you save 1 million Satoshis, 0.01 Bitcoin, and you wait to 2090, forget retirement. You're going to be able to retire 50 times over. Why do I say that? Because keep in mind, the average number of Satoshis per person, if you evenly divide it, is about 200,000 sats. If you factor in a PRAGUE distribution, you're probably looking at less than 50,000 sats. And that's today's earthly population. In the next 50 years, there'll probably be a couple more billion people. Oh, and by the way, there'll be 100 billion AIs programmed by the human beings. Each of them have their own savings of sats, right? Like, I think it's entirely possible that in much farther Bitcoin adoption, we're talking many decades out, but in much farther Bitcoin adoption, I think people will be able to retire on 100,000 Satoshis. It's I bought 30,000 sats last night on a whim, which I sometimes do when I'm like, dang, that was a good headline, or dang, that was a crazy, I just buy $10, buy $30, buy, just like, it doesn't matter anymore. Like, like another 10,000 sats doesn't really move the needle for me. But every single time I do that, I have to laugh. Like, I just casually bought 30,000 sats. Like, when I'm 60 years old, when I'm 80 years old, I'm going to be like, dang, that's just insane. I just bought it. My point is, if in the future, most people, because Bitcoin is better property than political currency, think about this. Most people might retire at 45 or 55 instead of 65 in a few decades. Why? Because the capital they're saving in is better and prices are falling to their marginal cost of production. Right? Like, what if people are retiring at 40 or 50 in a few decades and they're living to 80 to 120? If you're young, that is something I don't think you've considered. Most people I talk to that are younger, on the younger side, 20s, 30s, teenagers, even 40s, I don't think I've thought about that. Like, I love the boomers. I'm not trying to make them feel bad. And, there's way more to life than just retirement or the entertainments and time it buys you, right? Like people, like God, like nature, right? But that's something to really not take for granted. The average boomer today, the average 65-year-old today, probably has 20 to 25 years of retirement years to fully enjoy. But you, young person, you are probably going to have 10 times the purchasing power that they'll have at 40. Instead of looking at 20 to 25 years, you could be looking at 60 to 80 years of retirement. I know that might sound absurd. I know the, people in the comments are going to, whatever, think that's crazy or whatever, but I just don't think it is. Like, if we wait 50 years, a lot can change in 50 years. More is going to change in the next 50 years than has changed in the last 50 years. We have less in common with the near future and the past. And so if you are young, what I will say is this. Let's say you have the ability to stack X Bitcoin right now, and you don't because, I'm going to not save my money yet. I can wait until I'm older, right? Or I'm going to build up a down payment on a house first over the next 5 years before I buy Bitcoin. Or I'm going to gamble on some meme coin to make more Bitcoin or whatever, right? And I'm not saying don't do any of those things. I have my little tiny degen play and MicroStrategy, which for me is my altcoin. It's a good and noble thing to save and buy a house, especially if you have a wife and children. I don't, so I'm a bit more spoiled in that I have, that funding to buy Bitcoin. So I'm not putting that down and saying, oh, you're dumb. But I am saying you have to understand the precious short opportunity you have right now. If you're 65 or so, you have the opportunity right now to get off zero and buy your children's inheritance, right? And so where I'm blending these two messages together is that, okay, if you're 50, 60, or 70 and you're debating if Bitcoin's high risk or not, here's the real risk for you if you're older. Do you really want to be 80 years old and think, man, I could have given my kids retirement at 50 years old, but I didn't because I was too scared, right? That is the real pain. Most of you probably know this, but I work in multi-sig and estate planning, and the hardest conversations I have are not with the people that lost 1 to 5 million on some scam. They're not the people that lost 50 grand to 100 grand on some exchange like FTX blowing up. It's not the people that lost $1,000 sending a transaction to a wrong address. It's not the people that lost their seed phrase. The hard conversations are when those things happen and the person is older, and they know, not to be morbid, but they know they're never going to get it back when they're alive, and they know that their kids aren't going to get it. That's really hard. Those are the calls where they cry and I cry, and it's hard. That's really hard for someone to level with you and be like, I work so hard. I put in so many hours. I put in so many late hours. I sacrificed so much, and I've lost a third of it, or I've lost all of it, or whatever, right? That opportunity cost is gone. That is the real pain. And so all this encouragement I'm hoping you think about is ultimately not for maximum number go up, it's for maximum probability you're not going to have that regret of opportunity cost. And so if you're young, your opportunity cost right now that's so unique and so awesome is that you have the ability to buy a significant amount of Bitcoin, or you very possibly are going to be able to buy 40, 50, 60, 80 years worth of retirement, okay? If you're 20 or 25 like me and you buy enough Bitcoin, what happens if you can retire at 35 or 40, right? Like, this is the thing. People say, oh, Bitcoin cycles take too long, so I'm going to gamble on meme coins this cycle, but then I'll be Bitcoin maxi. Okay, you impatient child, like, wait 3 Bitcoin cycles, 12 years, for goodness sakes. Let's say you're 30 years old, 5 years older than me. Wait 12 years. You'll be 42 years old. I promise you. 3 cycles is a long period of time. I know every week and every month feels like an eternity in Bitcoin, but anyone that has held for 3, not 1, not 2, but 3 cycles and not lost their keys, not lost their Bitcoin, not lost it in a lawsuit, not lost it in a tax event, or due to emotional vulnerability, like, everyone's fine and like 50 times over. So that's my encouragement, is that if you're young, you have a precious opportunity where for very cheap, for dirt cheap, no more expensive than these pine cones, you can probably buy twice the retirement your boomer family, uncles, parents, friends have, right? And that is an amazing opportunity for your kids. Because ultimately, I don't want to see people get rich and just spend it on themselves for no purpose. Like, you have the ability, if you're young, to buy back time with your children or grandchildren 20 years from now. And if you're older, if you're a boomer, that would be my encouragement for you to get off zero. Yes, do it for you. Do it because your mixed portfolio of political energy and politically backed commodities and energy, that's trending to zero against Bitcoin. Yes, do it for you. Do it. Take a small emotional leap today with a small allocation to prevent the very likely possibility that you would have to then make a large contribution in the future to keep up, which is very emotionally taxing. But the most important thing, the most consequential thing, and the thing I can encourage you after having anecdotal experience of talking to a few dozen people that are in knowing during the last few years of life because they have an illness or they're sick or they're just real, they're just old. It's not a fun topic. Everyone wants the number go up charts. Nobody wants this real kind of raw life thing, but you are going to die. I am going to die. None of us know when, but when you're older, it's very probable. It's there will be a day that is the 10-year pre-anniversary of your passing, and you don't know when that day is. Today passes, and now you've less than 10 years left on your clock, and you don't even know it. So, and for me, that could be today. For the older you are, the more likely it is that day's already passed. So that's my encouragement if you're older. Like, view this Bitcoin thing as an opportunity, very likely to buy your kids retirement and time that's going to be 2 to 3 times longer than what you're going to experience. And I would encourage you, once you do that, soak up every moment, enjoy every moment, buy your time back, buy your peace of mind back. The sooner you buy their future back with Bitcoin, the sooner you can focus on enjoying your retirement. And that would be what I say. Most of my family members just I get asked this a lot, so I'll answer this at the end of the video. People ask, Luke, is your whole family orange pilled? Blah, blah, blah. Luke, all your family must have a bunch of Bitcoin because you told them to buy, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, you're right. I've been telling them to buy for years. Very few people in my family, though, have actually bought Bitcoin. Very, very few. Very few. And pretty much all of them that have bought Bitcoin are still in a low double-digit percentage. So yes, even Luke Broyles, even myself, despite making hundreds of videos on YouTube, 100+ million views across social media about Bitcoin, having, dined and met every Bitcoin famous person in the world, having obsessed about this thing for the better, over half a decade now, better part of a decade. It's like, despite all of that, yes, even I have not orange pilled my family and gotten people to go all in. However, guess what? Guess what? This has been the discussion that has been useful for them. This has been the discussion that has helped them get off zero. Because if you're mid-age, let's say you're in the middle, let's say you've got a kid, let's say you've got a parent, that's the best encouragement I can give you to then pass on to them. Is that, hey, maybe you don't need Bitcoin. And you're right, maybe you won't live long enough. But for your kids, for your grandkids, they're gonna convert it all to Bitcoin anyway when you're gone. Like, if this Bitcoin adoption thing takes 50 years, they're gonna convert it anyway. The difference is you can help them get 100 times more Bitcoin now than they'll be able to get in the future. And just as importantly, you can have a conversation with them about it when you're still alive. That is a memory that for them, they'll never be able to replace once you're gone. And that for you gives you more peace of mind as well. So that'd be my encouragement. No matter if you're a boomer or a zoomer, view Bitcoin like you're buying back your time in the future. And if you actually understand this thing, and you actually understand it's going to help people retire earlier, and if you understand that it's going to incentivize technologies for people to live longer and healthier lives, then you come very quickly to a very real outcome, very real probability of realizing, oh my goodness, I have the chance to buy more time than anybody in human history has ever been able to do before. So why on earth would you squander this opportunity? So thank you for watching this video. For the few of you that watched this whole video, I'll leave you with this. The fastest way for you to buy more Bitcoin is to orange pill your loved ones and family members, right? You're trying to find more ways to buy more Bitcoin. The fastest way is to help your spouse get off zero. It's to help your kids get off zero. It's to help your parents get off zero. Because while we all want our family to live as long as possible, the reality is that if you help your parents get off zero, that Bitcoin is eventually going to flow to you. Or likewise, if you help your kids get off zero, ultimately the Bitcoin is going to them anyway. So effectively, it's like you bought more Bitcoin, right? Because you reached that goal, right? If you're buying it for yourself now to give it to them later, why not just help them buy Bitcoin, right? So if you need help orange pilling your loved ones, feel free to reach out to me. Information to reach me is in the link in the description below, my phone number, email, or a link to book a call with me. All the information is in the link description below. The fastest way to help your loved ones understand Bitcoin, get off zero with Bitcoin, is to help them reduce their fears and concerns with Bitcoin. And the fast way to do that is to have a proper self-custody setup. This is why multi-sig vaults are so powerful. This is why jurisdictionally arbitrage multi-sig vaults are so powerful, especially when they're user-friendly and especially when they have a face on the other end of the call, right? I've talked to a lot of people that orange pilled their parents and their parents bought 10% a Bitcoin allocation, and have it in Coinbase or have it in an ETF or have it in whatever. And then when they talk to me, when I help them set it up, then their parents decide, now I want a 20% allocation. Now I want a 30% allocation, right? That's better for the parents. That's better for them. That's better for me. Ultimately, it's better for your kids as well. So thank you for your time. And I hope this conversation, this one-sided conversation in the middle of the forest, has been useful. Thank you. Subscribe.